I don't think we'll have a fist fight over who goes first.
I'm taking time to go through here, so you go first.
Hi, I'm Jim Ettenbach, 27 Valentine Road. Also, I'm the president of the Neighborhood Association for Pitney Farm. And it's interesting, the point that was brought up, I recognize you folks were not in office when the property was originally purchased. And we certainly have had these meetings commencing probably about 5 years ago. And it was interesting because one of the questions that was first asked 5 years ago was, what is the intention for the property? And at that point, I remember Steve Mountain stating that, well, there is no plan for the property. And I work in the real estate development and brokerage business, and I said, well, you folks must have on the back of the envelope analysis or some thoughts of what you want to use the property for. And he said, no, we have no idea whatsoever what we're going to use the property for. We just feel that it's a worthwhile endeavor. And so now we're looking 5 years later, and, I've heard money pit, I've heard also it's a jewel, but it seems as though that there's a lot of deferred maintenance as you walk around the property. If you look at the landscape, the trees, the condition of the roof, just the structure, you look at the silos in the barn itself, it's a significant undertaking. And also, so that's somewhat concerning because there was never an initial plan. And so, good news, bad news, the worst news is no news. So what we've really done is we've seen a lot of the neighbors have some consternation because they have a sense of uncertainty associated with the property. They're not sure what's going to occur with it, what it's going to bring, and we recognize Mrs. Pitney had a life estate in the facility, and there was also some concern because that during her stay here, that our understanding was that there was supposed to be responsibility for maintenance of the property, and it seemed to have further degraded. And so it seems also the original 4.2 purchase price, and then the fact that there wasn't taxes paid during the occupancy, and then also that there was additional deferred maintenance, and we're looking at this continual expenditure of public monies and taxes for the property, which is somewhat of a concern. And I recognize there's a balance of the public good, but we've also heard from the community the issue of the 7 acres and the 5 acres. So, perhaps there's a manner in which we could monetize some of the assets, not the property, and then preserve some of the remaining. But with that said, that many of our neighbors, when they originally purchased their homes, they purchased it with the perception that they were buying a home in a residential neighborhood. And they were not buying a home that was going to be abutted by a property that had semi-commercial activities or commercial type activities. And there's discussions of weddings, and there's been some events here where there's commercial trucks, commercial vehicles, and there was discussion 5 years ago, the thought of eminent domain, the public taking of property, which was hotly disputed in many acquisitions. There's been discussion in the neighborhood about that concept. It really feels as though the social contract that the town has by using the property for a much more intensive use than residential has really negatively impacted the neighborhood. And so, candidly, I'm all the way at the end, so I'm not as impacted with this on a day-to-day basis, but many neighbors are impacted with this, so it affects their quality of life. So that, that I recognize also that what we have to do is when we look at this asset also, we have to take a look at the context of Mendon Township and really look 20 years in the future. And the best way to do that is really look 20 years in the past and 25 years in the past and take a look, what are the trends, what do we see occurring? And 5 years ago, when we had one of our early meetings, I asked really the public, I said, who knows what a Kindle is? And around the room, one person raised their hand. And today, if I ask the same question, does anybody know what a Kindle is? Okay, electronic readers and the impact of libraries. And so there was some discussion about, with one of the studies, placing an 18,000 square foot library community center. And when you look at that, 18,000 square feet, the current library, I believe, is somewhere in the vicinity of 3,000 square feet. So if you're looking at something 6 times as large, a material increase in size. And I recognize sometimes our empire builders, or everybody wants to have something that's wonderful, but perhaps there needs to be a balance, because that seems to be very large with the change of technology. And also, when we talk about some other uses, maybe there's existing school sites that can be used for public meeting places and other unutilized assets. So those are just some thoughts and comments from the neighbors. Thank you.